open to questions. We have received many questions during the registration process. The meeting is accompanied with the catchphrase 100 questions to Ocean Winds. I think we already have 100 questions, but we open to even more. Therefore, you have a link via Slido. You have a QR code there. It's also on the website with a transmission for those watching us online. You can ask more questions. The answer will be provided to them in the last part of our meeting. And concerning the questions that will not make it through the Q&A session, you will get responses later in writing to the addresses that you provide during registration. Of course, as Baltic Wind, we also will have the great pleasure to report the entire meeting and transfer the information about this dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a pleasure, moving to specifics, to welcome the Ocean Winds team together with us. I'll start with Project Director Kacper Kostrzewa. Morning. We also have Dagmara Wieczorkowska, Senior Procurement Associate. Maciej Surmianek. That's document. Maciej Fuchs, Senior HSEQ Manager. Marek Świeżyński, Engineering Associate Director. And Robert Hauschak, Electrical Manager. Now going to the first part, so safety first, I'll ask Maciej Fuchs to present. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you had the opportunity to visit any offshore places. What happens in offshore? The first thing is safety first, to make sure we're all safe there. Principle, okay, a new building, we know where we are, but does everybody know how to leave it? Well, due to my experience and professional approach, I always want to see how can I fast evacuate the place. Okay, there are 2 exits next to lifts. In case of fire, we don't use lifts. There are 12 floors, so there's quite a bit of stairs. Go down there, level 0. And on level 0, we're outside of the building. So there are 2 exits from the building, either front or rear. But our meeting point is located behind the building at the parking lot. That's all from me. Then we'll have the pleasure to host you to lunch if you'd like. It is a building next door. It's the 22nd floor, same principles. So we have the evacuation exits next to the lifts. They're marked above the modern buildings, so they're equipped with announcements with PA systems. I have the bilingual. Well, it's not always so, but the green markings for evacuation downstairs. They have 32 floors there. It's a higher building. Well, level 0, you go outside of the building to the meeting point. Thank you. Okay, that's important information, but you have to remember the safety rules, not during the conferences like today, but always when you work offshore as well. So it should be a very important element of both the meeting and day-to-day work. So ask Kacper Kostrzewa up here so that we can present the project progress status. Go ahead. Water slides. Kacper, tell us, what's the current status of contracting of companies, particularly from the point of view of building the local content, which is contracting local companies? Okay, well, we have started contracting last year in 22. Now we have broad dialogue not only with Polish but also foreign companies, and we're trying to keep this dialogue animated, take into the account the companies which are not direct suppliers, but they are somewhere in the supply chain. Therefore, we are organizing events like this one. We remember the supplier Dave Ocean Winds last year in Silesia. This one is more important because we are at a further stage of contracting now. Parts of the contracts are signed. However, the main ones, we plan to establish them by the end of this year. And I hope the end of this year or beginning of the next year, majority of contracts will be concluded and assured. We have two companies that we're working with together at the moment. I'd like to thank them very much for taking part in this event. It's a P&Q and Schooner, who are the operators of our OEM port. And in this context, we are continuing with the project, contracting, but also optimizing the project under contracting. So we have to be quite flexible. An important change regarding last year is that we are upgrading the farm up to 500 megawatts. We're increasing the capacity. We decided to boost the project capacity by 25% due to the studies we performed, market status, and financial capabilities that show that a larger scale project will significantly impact the energy transition and is also better to us. Of course, the good information in the context of the fact that the demand for suppliers will be increased as well. Yes, definitely. More infrastructure, more devices. So yes, in this context, we are also expanding our dialogue with suppliers. Okay, going to details, looking at the schedule. Is it all according to the schedule? We have no significant delays. In fact, it requires a lot of work from us to stay on time because the offshore market, not only in Poland, but also globally, is currently quite demanding. But I must say that we have no significant delays. And like I have said, by the end of this year or beginning of the next year, we plan to complete contracting by the end of 2024. We aim to make the final investment decision in 2025. We'll commence construction that will be completed by the end of 2027 with a commercialization stage. So getting more into details of the current project status. What will the execution of the milestones look like? Well, at the moment, our main job or task in our team is contracting and advanced designing phase. We are at a stage where main elements of the farm are being designed. We are still conducting geotechnical studies, so the design data keep coming to us all the time, and it is the biggest burden for the team. However, the second next is contracting, because the market forces us to implement certain changes due to the original strategy. There will be more contracts than we planned initially. That's the market at the moment. So the amount of work is increasing, but like I have said, there are no significant delays. Therefore, we're planning to complete contracting with the beginning of next year. And then when we start collaborating with the selected contractors, we'll go through the design to actual implementation. How is this process impacted with what has happened over the last year from the last meeting? On the last suppliers day, which you had this phase 2 selections, right? Well, through our sponsors, and which is GPR and Engie, we have taken active support in the phase 2. We have submitted 9 organizational notions. We did not win either of the 3 competitions. However, what happens, but we're still looking at the Polish market as a very future-oriented market, which is one of the main markets where our group intends to grow. the OW Group as partnership or as our own projects. We'll see in the future, but one way or the other, we're watching both options. However, our entire focus stays BC Wind. However, we have an advanced project that we have to deliver to a happy ending, and that's our main point of interest at the moment. So, following that thread, because it's interesting in case of phase two decisions, the decision that will be made, they're not closing the path to the companies that did not get the permits stay active. And I understand your interest is still big concerning growing new projects in Poland. Yes, like I said, I think the Polish market is ahead of a lot. Well, phase two that we're talking about, first of all, and in this context, we're interested in new projects. Okay, partnership project is something we are doing throughout the world, and BC Wind is partner to many projects, in some which are OW's 100%, but it's a standard way of going forward with such projects. Yes, we are considering such solutions. Next steps, definitely. But mainly, our project phase one should reach its finale, and then on the phase two will start. This is the experience that you're gaining on the Polish market during phase one. Should they have reflected in what phase two or phase three arrangement will look like? Yes, definitely. Well, I'm talking about is that certain supply chains are being built for specific projects, and should they have a continuation in other projects? Is it a value added that can exist on the market and be sort of replicated with other projects? Well, it's difficult to say that building a supply chain would make sense for just one phase. Well, of course, it depends on the size, but in case of Poland, when it's less than 6 gigawatts, building a supply chain for this kind of volume would not be very financially feasible. So we're looking at it in many aspects, that this supply chain be built for the entire country or the area, the Baltic area, perhaps. Therefore, we are committed to building the supply chain in Poland in many dimensions. So definitely the experience that we are gathering on phase one work with the suppliers should be replicated and reused in phase two, whoever will be doing that phase two. However, from our perspective, what's important is that we prepare the supply chain to the next projects, for next projects in Poland, perhaps Baltic Sea basin projects, but not only because we always assume that if we're getting into processes like that, in the dialogue with suppliers and building a supply chain, broadly speaking, then we also hope to be able to use that supply chain or the individual companies with other projects as well. They don't have to be projects in Poland. They don't have to be the Baltic Sea project. We have projects throughout the world, including Korea, US, France, Great Britain, and a few others. And these projects also have requirements. At that moment, that supply chain is global enough that in many cases it can be used regardless of where it's project actually located. In what areas it can be reused between various markets that you mentioned. Well, quite a few areas like designs. It's a development stage where or studies or various design services. So it's very flexible. Now we see that many companies and involved in designing or studies are working out of different countries. We have companies building new centers used for the entire continent or actually for other continents. So I think it's an area where we, in fact, are able to make use of it without any limitations. And Looking at that changing environment and new farms, where you have new projects developed and supply chains are being created. Well, first of all, in post-pandemic times, secondly, in hard economic times in the world and in Europe, how does this situation change the reality of your operations in Poland and globally, but from the perspective of these businesses like HQ or others that will be joining the supply chain to beat the wind, how can they find their place in this changing reality? How much is this market changing? When, well, when you look through your global experience on that, because you're a company that can have a helicopter view of the situation, not only from the Polish or Baltic market, but can actually compare a very, very top view comparison. I think the experience is not only being a globally company, it's not only a benefit for us, of course. Many times we are trying to incorporate experience from other markets in the Polish market, and the building the companies of our own team, but not only. I think the collaboration in this area can also be very important to companies we are collaborating with. So if we are actually working with a company and we are considering certain problems and challenges in Poland, we're also using the experience. We and the company, we're using the experience brought in from other countries. So I think for them it is a valuable lesson, gaining such experience and or lessons that we draw. To an extent, it is sharing know-how, but it's justified because we are jointly working for a specific project. To what extent the Polish market and the approach of various entities and stakeholders also can be defined as mature, which is sort of promising globally. I think the awareness is growing because we started this quite a few years ago as ocean winds. As a Polish offshore market, I think it has very strongly evolved from the times. Well, the approach of suppliers to collaboration, not only on the Polish market, but also on the foreign markets, is much more open. You can see the perspectives much better, and the approach to dialogue has changed significantly. Therefore, when we are talking to suppliers, prospect suppliers, we mentioning not only the Polish project, but also the projects which are potentially further away. So going ahead after phase two, what's your view of what can happen in phase three? There are certain studies. The Polish Wind Energy Association mainly has that well-known analysis with that symbolic number of 33 gigawatts. They have published it. What is your view of that potential? Definitely, we do agree that the Poland's potential concerning offshore wind will not be met under phase one, probably not under phase two. Therefore, it seems reasonable to launch phase three. Whether it will be 33 gigawatts or some other value, I think today it's difficult to assess. However, definitely this will be significant capacity volumes. So you have to remember that phase one in Poland is proceeding very successfully so far, but please remember what's happening on global markets. No, many projects die. Not every project that we plan as a company or a country, takes off. In some cases, there are projects which do not go into implementation phase for various reasons. So we are expecting a specific volume from the offshore. Well, we should take into the account certain safety margin. However, it is not definitely a plan that can always be fulfilled 100%. So what factors can be decisive to whether the project takes off or not? Well, the simplest is feasibility or profitability. That the project does not mean the assumptions and it's not being pushed forward. There are many foreign examples where, due to lack of support systems, the projects were not reaching the assumed levels and were not going ahead. Others are technical problems that often can be overcome when committing more financial resources, but then again, so profitability threshold, or they cannot be overcome. So it happens. So the problems that the offshore projects encounter on the way the numerous. The question is whether you can always address them in a way for the project to go ahead despite that. So the experience is invaluable there. Definitely. Well, this experience of many international investors, actually. Going with that thread of the Polish potential of the Polish area in phase 2 and 3, what factors would you point to as the ones that will trigger that potential, or if something will not work, where will the obstacles be? Where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? Which path should we follow to make use of the potential, avoiding blind alleys, which could simply drown the projects, literally? Well, these are the postulates that have been repeated on the way, but first thing that has to happen, looking from the report from the Polish Offshore Association, it is a change of the sea zoning plan and legislative opening to third phase, which requires a clear direction defined by the authorities. The second one, I think, is opening the market to potential investors, but also to foreign investors who can simply run these projects. They are aware of the risks. They have experience from different countries, and they provide you with a guarantee of delivering on these projects in this specific phase. Therefore, when you look at phase 3, 2 and 3, these are the areas that have been defined as potentially less unfavorable, but say less favorable than the areas from phase 1. But colloquially speaking, we're using the simplest areas at the beginning, the easiest to manage, and then we're going up the difficulty ladder. So the more difficult ones require more work, more attention, and they have more threats associated with them. So how to use the potential to open the market to foreign entities at the same time building local content? Unfortunately, I have no straight answer here. If I did have one, probably I could be somewhere else, but I think that promoting local content is a mission and a duty of the entire market. Not only for the investors, also for the government authorities, because it's a benefit to all of us. So as OW, we always underline a building market, building a supply chain is not only building it for us. To a certain extent, it's a calculation that shows that it's better to use local content and local companies than use the ones that work on other distant markets. So if we can, we try to do it. However, the key is experience and capabilities of a specific supplier to provide or execute the specific scope. So it is aligned with a postulate coming up in discussion that the supply chains will be built in such a way that they're sustainable and resilient to various shocks relating to market conditions and moving the projects around. Am I understanding it correctly? Yes, definitely. What's very important in this context is building the supply chain and providing with the capability to keep developing, so that you build it in such a way and you build the project supply, the supply chain is able to keep existing and delivering certain elements to a specific country. We can count that other countries will be providing such demand, and we need to drive such demand. So building a supply chain for phase one, we have to make sure that phase two is at an appropriate stage for the supply chain to benefit from it, and then the same thing for the third phase. If there are no such possibilities, if there are delays, supply chain could and should reorient itself to other markets like Lithuania, Germany, which is expanding. These are definitely the directions where we can continue planning such growth. What about your projects, first of all, in Europe? What are the development perspectives for the Baltic Sea projects and for other area projects in Europe? Well, in Europe, in fact, we are building 3 projects, 2 in France and a West in advanced phase. We also have further project in the UK, and we're thinking about other French projects. Look, going down to base Baltic Sea level, we're interested in further growth in the Baltic Sea basin. Well, so it's definitely Poland, but we're also looking at other markets like Lithuania, Germany, Norway, and similar. So definitely BC wind, I'll stress it once again, is something we're focusing on, but we're also planning further development in Baltic Sea basin.
We know based on the media reports that the engagement in Lithuania takes quite specific shape, takes quite a momentum. It's picking up momentum. There are some decisions that have been taken. There's some cooperation. What about the supply chain that you're building in Poland for BC Wind? Is there any potential for it to be used in the adjacent, in the neighboring markets, for instance, in the Lithuanian market? Of course, this is definitely a very close market for us as Poland, due to a number of similarities, physical similarities between the two areas, also in the regulation area as well as culture and the approach. That's why we have a large potential to take advantage of a Polish supply chain in Lithuania. But also the other way around. An excellent example could be the port infrastructure. Due to the distances in the Baltic Sea basin, can be used both for servicing, for maintaining both Polish and Lithuanian markets, both ways. Now Poland is planning some installation ports, but also Lithuania. And I think that those projects in the future, there's going to be Poland, Lithuania, or Norway, or Germany. There's enough number of projects, but there is space, there is room to ensure the continuous operation of a number of installation and maintenance ports. Thank you, Kasper. So now the time that you mentioned, the specific decisions will be taken already this year and specific milestones that are outlined for 2024 and the subsequent years. So this is the time of very intense work. I do hope that we'll be able to talk about it many times in the future. And since you're a person that's regularly participating in many events for the wind industry, not only the offshore ones, I'm sure that both the participants of today's meetings here in Gdańsk and also those who follow us online will have an opportunity to talk to you and to follow on an ongoing basis the development of the project. As you said, what's important, in line with the schedule, on track. Thank you very much. So we keep our fingers crossed. And I'd like to also encourage you to contact Kasper as part of our networking here on site today. And now I'd like to invite, as part of moving on to the third part, so discussing the case studies. So an example of how this collaboration is moving on with progressing with ocean winds. So I'd like to invite the CEO of P&Q, Maciej Bartnicki. The company P&Q in December 2022 signed a contract to prepare the design documentation to export power from the BC Wind offshore wind farm. The scope of work includes the necessary documentation, including the formal and legal actions and measures. I think it was one of the most interesting parts that those who want to be part of a supply chain are interested in, because you are lucky, as I understand, to be already a part of a supply chain. So first of all, to get some introduction for the participants of the meeting, what is your profile of operations and what are you offering for the offshore industry? Good morning. PNQ is a company present in Poland and also in the adjacent countries. We are present in the Baltic countries. Operationally, we are also present on the German market. Our head office is in Białystok, which is quite far from the sea coast, but for more than 2 years, we've also had an office in the Tri-Cities, specifically in Sopot. Let me just mention here, it's not so, but the office, we opened this office due to the fact that we received a contract from the offshore industry, but other reasons, namely my personal fascination with the Tri-City, but also the availability, relatively high availability of the qualified personnel, qualified workforce. This is the truth. These are the decisions we took at that time. We are dealing with designing, constructing, and running, operating any renewable projects. And therefore, offshore was definitely the growth area. Of course, there's always a decision to get engaged, to get involved in this part of industry. It's preceded by an in-depth analysis, typical development. It just happened that we came to the decision that it came to the conclusion that if we don't find ourselves in this area, a large part of the market will simply be not available for us. In this specific part, we focused on engineering and the design activities related to the needs of ocean wind. We were successful to get invited into the tender process, tender proceeding. I think we were good enough in this project, in the tender. We were selected to implement quite an interesting engineering project performed mainly with the people employed here in Gdańsk. The majority of work is performed here in the Tri-City. So this is local content squared, as a matter of fact. So what was the beginning? How was the beginning of this adventure? How did it come about? Well, I think that here in this room, we have a majority of persons that are professionally dealing with business development or the commercial operation, but we also have businessmen, entrepreneurs. So each of us knows that in order to be invited to win the tender, first you have to be invited to the tender. To be invited to the tender, you have to be able to be visible in the awareness of the potential customers. The business development has a number of features. You build it different ways. It was easier for us, maybe because we are active, a company active in the onshore industries, also wind. So we weren't far away from this area. So we invited one of the many entities to a multiple stage tender proceeding aimed at selecting the service provider for the engineering phase of the project. Well, the tender proceeding, as I mentioned, was a multiple stage proceeding. It took quite a long time, and it's quite a feature of this type of projects. It don't take decisions within a week. How long did it take, in fact? At least 6 months, if I remember correctly, starting from the invitation. And it's okay. That's how it should be probably done, because it gives you this option of a bidder to really get to know the needs of the requirements of a given customer and the specifics of running the project for the specific customer. This works both ways. Namely, when we submitted the tender, the bid, we know very well what we go for, what are the upsides and downsides of the cooperation, what is the difference between this customer and other customers. On the other hand, the customer gets to know us. He has a chance to convince himself, and sometimes the process is longer this way. And at the end of the day, the decision is taken, the contract is signed, and you then have to perform the work, the job. And was it true that you really knew well how these offshore areas look and waters? Were there no surprises? It seems so. Of course, it's never so that we know everything. That's the process of learning, the organizing. But I must admit that Ocean Wind is a customer that properly, that describes the task well. It gives a lot of comfort for the bidder that we really are able to value to quote what the customer wants. So there's little room for misunderstanding. So it's a very good thing. So I can confirm, yes, that my company received a well-described subject of the order of our customer. So we are able to give a precise valuation, precise quotation. And what's also very important, the customer, I may say, in a very serious manner, was treating its obligation to provide information disclosure to the bidders. So the bidders at each stage of a tender were receiving information, I would say, that helped them to make subsequent decisions. It was really mentioned a number of times what the customer welcomes, what the customer is expecting, what you should place attention and you emphasize. So all bidders were receiving all this type of information. So our success maybe was due to the fact that we were able to respond to these type of things in a very active manner. So I must say we had a very nice flow with the purchasing team of our customer. As a consequence, we submitted a good, attractive bid, and a very important comment here. Always in a situation where we are dealing with a subject of the order which is not fully described in detail, the result of unknown. So a natural reaction of any businessman, bidder, is to mitigate the risk, maybe with some buffers, maybe increase the margin. So take precautions in case of risks materializing. So the risk mitigation measures. So you have some room for margin. So now here we knew when to deliver, what should be delivered. So we were able to provide a good bid without any unnecessary buffer. So it was well described subject of the order. So that was a formal period, the invitation and the tender. What had to happen for you to get invited to the tender proceeding? Well, let us remember that this conversation was supposed to be a guide, a bit of a guide for those who are not at the stage but would like to achieve this stage as you had achieved. Of course, we all are operating in a certain ecosystem. The renewables industry, wind industry, offshore, wind or onshore is, I can say, represents a certain ecosystem. Within this ecosystem, it's worth to find yourselves in this ecosystem. For instance, by taking part in this type of events, it's worth to come to the awareness to make the tenderers aware of your presence, of your offer, of your capabilities. Of course, it's worth to emphasize marketing. It's worth to boast your success, to build your brand. We also made the assumption that, of course, the customer, a foreign customer that's entering the Polish market, this customer is also doing its own market research. They also try to find out, to understand who's worth working with. But of course, you cannot wait passively for your opportunity. You have to develop this opportunity. You have to make the customer aware of your capabilities. It seems to us that we were successful in that. It was not only us who were successful, but I don't know how many entities took part in this tender. 1,000,000%, I'm sure we were not alone. I think the number was quite significant. So the majority of those entities succeeded in doing that. So I encourage my colleagues here, present in this room, to perform this active business development. Also, my company, in terms of cooperation with Ocean Wind and in general with the offshore industry, doesn't want to kind of be complacent. We'd like to make our customers aware of the fact that is a company not only capable of engineering, of design work, but also we can do the works related strictly with the construction, erection of those facilities or its operation, because it's a separate, interesting thread, but I think it's a major pie that can be split between the companies, more so local companies than the external ones. So the operational phase of the product will take much longer than the construction phase. We're also thinking about how to come to be present in this phase. So maybe we'll be offering some services that are not clearly associated with our company today, but we probably will supplement our portfolio with type of services that can be used during the operational phase of the project. It is worth to make customers aware of your capabilities. Continuing this sort of a guide, of a user guide, what are the factors that made the key to the decision of ocean wind? I think definitely because it should be posed to ocean wind. When you did an assessment, maybe after the tender, what was good that you did in the tender? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a businessman of old school businessman, I would call, despite my young age. I'm of old age. I believe that there are certain parameters of doing business that are kind of time resistant, but there are certain values that are worth having in your business operation. This is resistance, loyalty, engagement, persistency. And at the end of the day, there is a bid. There are numbers that you have to fill in. And the numbers are the precondition for the bid to be attractive commercially for the customer. But during the tender proceeding, we have an opportunity to convince the customer that apart from delivering, we also can deliver in the right style with full engagement, full involvement, full support. I would say also the engagement of the management board. I think it's very important. The management board, the owners, the engagement is also very important for the given customer. To see that, I realize, I do hope that Ocean Winds will confirm during the behind-the-scenes conversations that I'm right here, but this was also one of the factors that were decisive. One more thing, when I reach back in the memory, Ocean Winds was kept repeating to us clearly in the tender proceeding. Ocean Winds was really interested in the bidder to understand the scope of the engagement. If the bidder will indicate that they do understand, they really went through the effort to get to know the requirements of the tenderer, and the bid will clearly indicate it. That will be a major parameter for the positive assessment of the bid. But I feel honored by this question. Let me emphasize that, and I presented my vision of the answer to this question. But what's really the true answer to this question? Definitely, my ordering party has to answer. Please say, as you started, you have customers, you have areas of operation that go beyond the offshore. Offshore the area that you're just entering, one of the development areas for your company. Is there anything specific for the offshore customer? Would you find something that differentiates, sets apart the offshore customers from the rest, but over the principles, the rules that you play by approaching the development, the customer, are roughly the same? Well, the offshore industry is very particular, is very specific. It's very much different from the onshore industry. Let me draw your attention to the fact that even the smallest offshore project is much larger, many times larger than the largest onshore project. So the scale, the magnitude makes it that the investors are definitely much stronger in capital terms that are investing than the onshore entities. Of course, PGs in offshore and onshore, so in both areas. However, there's a lot of onshore entities that are not able to operate in the offshore industry. They're not large enough, not strong enough. We don't have this capacity for taking on debt. In the offshore industry, it's a very important feature. There are only large entities. The investors are only, as Mr. Kasparov are able to guarantee that they can deliver. This guarantees also stems from the scale of operations, the length of operations of those entities. It is unfortunately so, but the larger the given entity is, the more the numbers count. So it's much more complicated. It's more difficult to convince the customers that you're the right choice. It's difficult to provide, outline in your bid the values that you're saying, but at the end of the day, between us and the decision maker, it's simply paper based on which they must make the decision on the paper. Without personal meetings, it's very difficult to do it. Sometimes you can do it, you can be successful at that. There are more differences, definitely, but in terms of the technical issues, it would be quite obvious that we would be saying that on the sea you can't build roads or platforms for mounting for installations, but there's a number of things, maybe a number of things that those areas have in common. For instance, the personnel, human resources of the companies operating in the industry on the investor side as well as on the contractor side. These are the personnel educated mainly in the onshore area. So certain behaviors, certain procedures, standards, patterns of behavior are transferred from the onshore to the offshore segment, at least at the stage of engineering and construction. The challenge that the P&Q faces, if we are serious thinking about to be active in the operational phase, is reverse 180%. The operational phase, as I can imagine it, it's more related to the services that are typically offshore services, where the company with typical land origin, like us, will have to change the mindset, the way of thinking, potentially employ additional personnel with more track record in the offshore industry. And here, where the handicap exists for the companies that grew in the offshore companies, providing services, and there's a number of such companies, and definitely those companies want to cooperate with you. So we'll try to compete against them. So it's a matter of supplementing your competence area with respect to the offshore area. It's also a matter of looking forward. Each of us is a businessman, and we must think what's coming next. We are interested in an interesting country and also in an interesting epoch, interesting time. The diversification of purchase or the portfolio is quite an obvious thing. If we're talking about consulting advisory services in 2016, 2017, I had a pleasure with a full pain of that experience to experience how the regulatory affairs or issues, political issues, can have an impact upon the operations of the wind industry. Those who were involved in the onshore industry, they know how many people had to change their jobs then, because simply this market expired. Now each of us has to look at what's happening next, what's coming next. And based on our understanding, market research, we came to the conclusion that the offshore industry will constitute a major part of the business. So we have to be there, present there, not only in Poland, but our experience gained in Poland, we will try to also use in the expansion on the foreign markets. It's a natural consequence of that process. And I must praise not so much myself, but the industry itself. It seems that the last few years of relative prosperity with respect to the renewables segment in Poland created a certain foundation for the expansion, foreign expansion of many companies, both us, my company, as well as the competing companies, but I'm really keeping my fingers crossed for. And I have an impression that you, as a customer, is able to build a well-running, effective, strong supply chain based on the local service providers. Then it'll definitely help them a lot in their international expansion. It may turn out that in 10 years' time, Polish companies with our entrepreneurial spirit, with such an uncompromising approach, will become major players, serious players, at least in the Baltic Sea area. That's my hope. That's what I'm hoping, that can be achieved. And thanks to such entities like Ocean Wind that consequently want to build the local supply chains, we stand the chance of making it happen. In truth. So this expansion, and you see, first of all, for us in the Baltic Sea basin for now. Well, it's the art of what's possible. It seems to us that, of course, it would be nice to talk about even more remote markets. I personally think that the crowning, at least of my professional career as a businessman, would be to the big business project in the United States, for reasons that maybe I could elaborate on later. But the art of achieving what's possible, as a rule, as a principle, the foreign expansion of any company, in my personal opinion, is if you have a very strong position on your own local market. This is the precondition, the prerequisite. I can imagine expansion always in such a way, but first of all, you do a strong foundation locally, then you build a wall around, and then and the roof you build once you have achieved the first and the second stage. That's my vision of doing business. I think the natural direction of further development is the Baltic Sea area, but what the future will bring, we'll see. If any of our customers present in Poland would like to invite us to a joint adventure in the Adriatic Sea, why not? That probably would be an excellent conclusion of this conversation, but I have a few more questions so we can return to this topic. If it's not during this conversation, then maybe during the discussions behind the scenes later on. So we discussed this period of starting the cooperation, but as I understand, based on the press releases and the materials that you publish, it took place at the end of last year. So in fact, the cooperation has been in place for 3 quarters up to now. Yes, it's taken slightly more than a year, because between the signing of the contract and disclosing any press release, there is some time to come to an agreement of the content of the press release. So it's a good practice. So more than a year. So we discussed it, and I think these are very valuable comments. How did it happen that you found yourself among the partners collaborating with Ocean Winds? So if you can now elaborate on what this collaboration is all about in practice. Well, as a matter of fact, we were not surprised by many things. As a principle, it's very important. We feel in collaboration with our ordering party very comfortable. This is for any businessman. It's important that the cooperation is safe, comfortable. This is comfort at any possible level, if I can say so, both in terms of the communications path with the ordering party, how the technical teams work with one another, also very pragmatic things such as payments on time, timeliness of payments. We know that Poland is a leader in terms of taking advantage of your suppliers and extending the payment terms. So at Ocean Winds, it's simply unthinkable. These are very important elements that in Poland customarily don't talk about, but I should talk about. As I'm personally not involved in the implementation stage of this project, it happens, of course, that I ask questions how things are going. This is my obligation as a member of the management board of a company. And as a matter of fact, since I have an engineering, I have my track record in the implementation phase. Sometimes I delve into details, but trying not to interfere with the process. So I'm hearing that the cooperation is smooth, the customer is very concrete, is able to enforce what they want. They treat the supplier with respect, but also with respect the comments that the supplier submits regarding the course of the process, progress of the process. It's all guaranteed that apart from the financial aspect, at the end of the day, the point is to make money. We have a certain feeling of being a part of something good, a good project, a good part of energy transition. We take part in such way that we gain new experience. We are opening new doors for ourselves. So I can say I can only speak in superlative terms about this specific cooperation. This is, I think, a very important thing, taking into account what you said, the scale, the magnitude of investment projects, the scale of investors that you're working with in the industry, in this segment of the market is enormous. and why one can take into account the fact that this may distort this partnership relationship between as if it were David and Goliath. But I understand that this partnership is very important, and in this case, is definitely maintained and well conducted. Definitely, I can confirm it, and definitely yes, definitely yes. And I'm truly convinced, fully convinced that it was like that, it is like that, and it will be like that with respect to all the other service providers. The partnership, you either have it or not have it. It seems to me, let me just give a compliment here, that Ocean Winds has this partnership in its veins, in its DNA. And the fact that we are here all together and the way even this event is being moderated, it simply confirms it as well. Excellent. Moving on to the potential of offshore wind farm industry. How do you see further on your opportunities? First of all, please say, how do you see the growing ambitions expressed, first of all, at the political level? More and more declarations, more and more gigawatts on the Baltic Sea, on the Northern Sea, in Europe, and so on. So the bar is going up and up. On the other hand, the industry keeps saying more boldly and more boldly, wait a minute, maybe we will not be able to deliver such a large investment project because the financial situation is as it is, because there's a lack of suppliers, the matter of the capacity of the ports, ships, and so on and so on. From the point of view of your business operations, how do you see the opportunities for the growth of offshore industry in the context of cooperation with developers and other entities?
Well, you're right. Of course, we live in times when you are not sure if the sun will rise the day next morning, but for the reason that you have mentioned, the situation, for example, relating to currencies, but also military aspects, can't forget about that. What will the power sector look like in 30 years? Well, surely we do have a policy in place. You could obey it, see it, but if you read its provisions, you have the answer, but we don't know if it's going to be met. But I do believe in offshore wind. I think so much funds were put into the development of that. I think the machinery suppliers have invested so much, they have put the future of the business on the sea. So I think that this will result in no return. So that industry will be developing, perhaps a bit slower than some years ago we did think, but it will be developing. Have a look at that dependency that in phase one of the projects, there are many entities there already working in Poland in collaboration with foreign investors who did build a similar facility outside, like Polenergia Queen, PGE Orlen. Everybody's working with someone. So I think that along with the increase of the experience of local players, their readiness will be increasing to conduct such projects by themselves entirely. And I think it's a good information. So the participation of the Polish subjects will be bigger. And I'm an optimist in general. What is my personal objective? It is, well, to build experience sufficiently big in offshore in Poland that we can offer our services abroad. And here we also counting on the Baltic Sea basin, of course, but should any trusted customer who also guarantees us a financial security that will be paid, if they would like to take us to Caribbean for an adventure, we'd be very glad to go. So yes, I am an optimist. I think it's worth spending our time. It is worth investing appropriate funds in developing the stuff. This industry has good future. I'd like to point your attention to the fact everybody present here to the operating phase, because designing and building is just a few years, but operations will be dozens of years, and there will be plenty of opportunities to do business there. So, concluding, in a pill, what recommendations would you have to the businesses that would like to follow that path and become a permanent part of the offshore wind industry? Well, Peter, very in-depth study of the market, selecting the businesses you want to work with from the point of view of it being feasible, then preparing your own stuff. It is time and money to be invested. Then perseverance, a bit of persistence, some luck, and it will work out. How about the preparation of the stuff? What competences there? Well, you could be mentioning a long list. Well, technical ones are the must-have. Without that, you can't make it. But with a huge stress on health and safety, offshore industry in particular is very serious about that. We are experiencing that as well. There can't be coincidences there. Companies have to be prepared for collaborating with the ordering parties in that aspect. And well, that's basically all. The rest of that business does not differ much from what we're doing onshore. Well, specific financial backing, and we go with it. So that recommendation builds a bridge to our next presentation in a way concerning the safety. And I must say you're an excellent speaker who can and who knows how to share experience. That's also my recommendation to other Polish companies and representatives, that they would approach their operations or the business in such a way to share the experience you are gaining, because it is invaluable. Thank you very much. It was nice talking to you. Okay, the applause is fully deserved. So now let's go to another part, which is what we mentioned, the environmental protection and safety. What Ocean Winds requires of suppliers. Once again, Maciej Fuchs. Welcome again. Well, my name is Maciej Fuchs. As you can see, I work in the business about 18 years in ATCQ. Why HSEQ? What's the difference between HS and the others? Well, a couple of words. In offshore, working on foreign projects, it's called HSEQ. In Poland, there are additional requirements. It's defined as HS and environment protection. However, this is supplemented by numerous different requirements concerning the offshore operations. So it differs a bit in approach from the entire HS culture. The approach to the requirements being put forward, among others, to suppliers, which is you. The principle of safety concerning the complexity of the entire process of building a wind farm, but I'll mention that in a moment. Well, my job today is to highlight our requirements concerning safety to you in offshore and working in offshore, but also a couple of words concerning the requirements we put on our suppliers in this respect. Well, building a wind farm is a very comprehensive process. Plenty of sub-assemblies, components have to be manufactured. Just the manufacturing, the development stages, design stages. It's a very comprehensive and extensive process. And starting with the just design phases. As Ocean Wind, we bet on safety by design. I don't know if you came across that term, but I do hope you did. But when evaluating your proposals that I receive on my desk, I often had a question from Polish companies: what is design risk register? What's it about? How does it impact designing? Well, it's a bit easier on North Sea, where there are legal requirements concerning it, to define and analyze that risk and design safely. Here, part of it is being put on the shoulders of the designer, but also we, as the offshore industry, are placing these requirements. We are escalating them to our suppliers. Well, starting with designing, the entire risk analysis in designing, all types of reports concerning fire security, fire protections, evacuations. Here you see on the photo how big structures these are, how much effort has to be put in designing them, then transporting them on site, then loading, unloading. It's not only foundations, it concerns all the other sub-assemblies and components comprising a offshore wind farm. I think some of you can represent manufacturing plants, shipyards, and some factories, so you are aware of the safety systems you need to implement on site. Okay, logistics, which is another challenge, and requirement on safe transportation of such components, delivering them on site. The ports that we have mentioned already, several operations related to that, well, preparing various sub-assemblies, their security, onshore logistics, offshore logistics. There are several security requirements that we apply here. I won't be able to define to you because I have a time limit, but as many processes you have concerning the wind farm constructions, as many safety rules do you have for each process. Just generally saying it, I want to give you a broad picture of how complex it is, how many requirements there are. Well, an unresolved process are all lifting operations, where another thing is competence on the first flight, which means designing the lifting operations plans. As you can see, these are huge structures, huge sub-assemblies, but lifting or crane operations, not only in the ports, also in your manufacturing plants, where practically everything you produce has to be loaded, transported, delivered on site, and unloaded. What we require is, first of all, is competence. So appropriate people trained to that effect, planning that, in a way, is a clue of all that. You have to properly and safely plan the operation. Requirements concerning the operators, people who take part in such an operation. There are several things there that impact safety of these works. Certification and inspections of cranes, of all ships and vessels. So there's a huge amount of things that impact the safety of delivery of all the related operations. Well, then installation in the sea. Well, you have to scan the area, whether there's no oxos there. You know, in Baltic area, there was the World War II. That's not only seabed, also on land, where we'll be building the transformer substation, cable routes, export cables, inter-array cables. You have to check if there's nothing there that could collide. That's one of our requirements that we impose on our suppliers. Well, the operation itself, you know, building such a thing, I mean, you know, you have to check what's on the seabed. Well, the other thing, lifting operations, competence of the employees, the trainings they have to undergo, planning the operations. I mean, it is a sea operation, therefore the access to first aid or medical evacuation, if there would be any kind of incident or accident, is very important. Therefore, have very restrictive requirements concerning the trainings on first aid, advanced first aid, like NetCA services where we have medical assistance service via video conference. Work with SAR, with a maritime safety agency. Any work done on sea on our wind farm has to be secured so that we are able to transport the person swiftly in case of need. We don't have such commercial services on the Polish market concerning sea evacuation. They will have to be provided soon concerning the flights and medical evacuations, sea rescue, but is SAR able to meet the requirements concerning the number of offshore wind farms? Well, there's a question mark to that. It's not sure yet. So another photo showing weather conditions, night operations, crane operations, also height operations, transporting weights, manual movement. I mean, the weight of the bolts that you have to use to put the towers together. I mean, there's a lot of factors and threats that impact that this work is not so safe, but our requirements are aimed at minimizing that risk because we want to deliver that work safely. I think each of us, when we come to work, wants to safely get home after work, their families, children. Therefore, our requirements that we present and append to our RFPs, I'll mention that in a moment. It is important. I mean, here I'd like to say a couple of words about trainings and personnel transfer. One of the very many accidents are involved with personnel transfer on the sea. It relates to specific trainings. Staff have to work in the sea. Well, concerning the seamen, there are clear requirements. There are conventions that define these requirements concerning trainings, rescue, survival, but concerning the offshore industry, as the GWO trainings that are the basis for us to onshore a new employee. But we also have medical examinations, and the Polish legal system concerning turbines and offshore wind, they are not defined yet exactly. Here we're using the international sea medical certificate and the test oil and gas from UK, where the scope of medical examinations is more restrictive and therefore ensures us a better knowledge that the employee is better prepared to perform the functions in the sea. Series of other trainings related. Well, the emergency response plan, how to operate in crisis situations, the plans we require you to have before commencing any work in the field, like work plan, safety plan. So putting in Polish, it is the last plan. All the instructions of safe work, or work permits, permit to work system that should be applied. All requirements concerning the vessels. This requirement, here you have the RCTV on the photo, but on the previous units, where we have the SOT, all certificates, class certificates, all related documentations that are small part making up bigger picture to perform all our work safely. Let's not forget about the land. In my presentation, I'm using photos from two ocean wind projects. That's the CMATE project in Belgium and MOEast in Great Britain, in the UK. Let's not forget about the land. We're just building a substation. How many contractors do we have on site to coordinate all that, to plan it? CMOPs, our simultaneous operations, where we have several tasks being performed simultaneously, not only on land, but also in the sea. It's also about the requirements to scan land for ordnance, unexploded ordnance. During the test, we found mortar shells there. So such principles have to be implemented, and we are implementing them to ensure safety of our work and our employees this way as well, and also yours as suppliers. Well, this is a brief information about the numbers of incidents. I don't know if you know the G+ organization. It is an organization concerning the safety of work globally. It assumes the owners of developers, wind farm owners, developers of assemblies and sub-assemblies, turbines in particular. There are a lot of 886 incident events and people hurt last year, just last year. Throughout the world, yes, globally. This is data coming to them not only from Ocean Wind, but also from other developers. So it includes the statistics from the US, from Asia, from Europe. What main areas of incidents do we have? Ship incidents, turbine incidents, land incidents. What main areas? Lifting operations, transporting, and accesses, which is entry, exit from substations, turbines, etc. We are aspiring concerning safety that all the work is performed safely. Our aspiration is no accidents, no damages and damage to environment and health. And due to our requirements and also your support, I do hope we'll manage to jointly deliver that BC wind farm project without any accidents. Concerning the HSEQ requirements, the suppliers are available on our website. It's quite a thick book, therefore I'm not discussing it, because every process of constructing a wind farm has got its requirements based in legal requirements, also additional requirements which come from offshore requirements. They're often transformed from oil and gas to offshore wind industry. We also have requirements concerning construction site rules, which are all security requirements on our construction sites. We have requirements on quality, where the equipment you will be providing the sub-assemblies. All this has to be appropriately tested. We have a term in oil and gas like safety critical. So anything, any elements, assemblies of systems that are safety critical to people as well. All this is also one of our requirements for all devices and sub-assemblies to identify such elements, to have a defined performance standard to them, a quality standard. evaluation. Well, part of the HSEQ evaluation, we receive your bids. First, we send the RFP, then we get the proposals. Some of the HSEQ evaluations are included in our overall evaluation. You get a simple questionnaire from us. It's an Excel file, a questions sheet where often you are unable, some of you are unable to answer clearly and exhaustively, therefore we have to ask you again, but the sheet's quite simple. It's based on questions concerning risk analyses, concerning risk identification, which I haven't said earlier. I might have missed it, but every operation which is properly planned with us has to be analyzed from the point of view of risk identification and threats identification, and what checks and what controls we have to enter concerning such risks. So you get a questionnaire, which is a question sheet, and we ask you to confirm that with additional procedures and provisions or records that you have, that we are able to evaluate your company properly from this point of view. To us, it is important because then to provide an evaluation of the bid from the point of view of the requirements we put you, lack of any information automatically degrades your rank. So it's very important to properly present the system that you have. And in summary, each of us is in part responsible for that safety at every stage, both at the bidding stage, also delivery stage of the process. So that'll be all from me. Since we have 5 minutes to the break, I'll ask you to have a few questions to you. Well, out of schedule. Okay, what you have shown in your first part, the safety first, is not only a corporate slogan, but it's also specific realities that take into the account the fact which is often overseen, that sea is a natural force, and Baltic, those who had a chance to sail Baltic, and myself, as a son of a seaman, I'll say I did have such opportunity as a child to be not in the times we often produce on the photos where you have sun and calm waters, but in winter, when Baltic Sea is a wild natural force, it's difficult to master. So therefore, I am sharing that reflection that you do have to take into account the fact the Baltic is a huge natural force, and that criteria are never absolutely too stringent. Now, going to the criteria, in your opinion, are they often changing when you look at it historically? Then how often, if so? Well, historically, no, because criteria are clear. The ones we have set up at the moment, which were enacted a year and a half ago, they keep operating, of course. There are additional things that are specified depending on the bid and the package we receive. Also, other criteria concerning analysis that are required at the design stage for the offshore substations. Other criteria are for the onshore substations. But these are specific criteria concerning a specific package. There are other criteria concerning safety and designing, concern also the turbines, where every specific is different. So each specific should have well-defined criteria, and that's how we are trying to have it with us. So they are stable and they are not changing, and are they not following the technology evolution? Well, yes, they're stable, but technology is evolving. It's going forward all the time. But you have an example of wind turbine access where at a time you could also have boat landing and a ladder. Now we have various systems nowadays that allow to minimize the risk of events or incidents during going over to the turbine. So we are doing the evaluation ourselves of the access methods. So technology is going forward also concerning safety, concerning evacuations from wind turbines, also from offshore substations. So we are up to date on that. Concerning the evaluation of the bids that come to your desk, where are the biggest weak points there? If we kept our meeting as a sort of advisory type of meeting to provide guidelines to the businesses that want to ensure they pass the evaluation, what are your main pieces of advice here? Well, make an effort. Sometimes the bids I get, either I don't get the sheet or the companies don't treat it seriously, that these are requirements. I mean, is it a lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, understanding? What is the weight of that topic? I think a bit so for the moment. Concerning the Polish market, concerning the foreign market, the bids look differently in this respect a bit. So this is a main message. Be serious. I have a panel that sounds. Look at it seriously. It's a very serious topic. Our objective, our aspiration is to deliver the project safely. So please.
Thank you very much. A very important topic, very important presentation. Also, a round of applause, please. And we would like to finish our first part and have the pleasure to invite you for a coffee break. Let us meet back here again at 11 o'clock. So please ask questions on the slides. Just as a reminder, we like to publish the code, remind you the code using which you can get to the appropriate website. Thank you very much.
Jeszcze raz powtórzę.
Let me repeat.
Zaczynamy
We
drugą
are
część. Zapraszam
starting the second
wszystkich
part.
na
Please,
miejsca.
I'd like to invite everyone to return to your seats,
Teraz
please.
zobaczymy prezentację
We will
planu
now
ściągnięć
see the
BC
presentation of the
na
procurement plans,
okres
purchasing plans of
bieżącego roku i
BC
przyszłego.
Wind for this year and the next year. The presentation will be made by Maciej Surmionek, Head of Procurement Department.
Proszę bardzo.
Maciej, please go ahead.
Dzień dobry.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maciej Surmianek. I have a pleasure to head the procurement team of East BCW.
Troszeczkę a propos zespołu.
A few words about the team. During the previous edition of the Suppliers Day, you had an opportunity to meet our team, but at that time was, let's say, of a limited content, a limited membership, just 2 teams, 2 members of the team. However, our procurement needs since then have reached a very advanced stage, which of course forced an increase of the membership of the team, which currently looks as follows. So, in a few words, we are not stopping, we are moving forward. We do realize that the project will definitely face negotiations, challenges, and contractual challenges. Therefore, the number of people has been increased substantially. It's a six-fold increase. And now, as part of a structure, I'm saying this because I'd like us all to understand that we are talking about the main packages. However, the procurement department is also planning the contracting of all activities, supplementary ancillary activities, that will be several dozen of them. And I'd like you to know that these will also be persons involved. Briefly, I will describe the team. It was split mainly into 4 main segments, starting with the wind turbine that Javier is responsible for, up to the electrical department. We are talking about the export cables, inter-array cables, and both substations. Next, we have the foundations department, and as part of foundations department, we are talking about purchasing as well as transporting and installing. The next section is the department handling the purchasing of professional services, and it also managing the installation ports, marshalling ports. Also, we have the sub-team, but a part of which we have here present, Dagmara, and this is the team that has been dealing with permitting process so far. Where are we now? First, the supply chain. Let us repeat it once again. Ocean Winds is looking at it in 3 dimensions. So we're talking here about involvement of the companies as part of a local economy, local communities. We're talking about educating future human resources, future personnel that will be required for the time of operating and maintaining their wind farms. And we're talking about developing competence, developing skills. Where are we now? At what stage we are now? These are the tenders that have been finalized, have been closed, the participants of which we also had an opportunity to meet today during the presentation. We closed in 22 the construction permit project for the land onshore substation. This year we completed the permitting process for the onshore export cable. This year also we completed the project of the construction permit for the construction of the offshore substation. We also completed the permitting process for the wind farm. Currently, we have contracted the concept of the maintenance, operation and maintenance port. We are planning the contracting of the construction that will commence in Q1 2024. The main packages we are talking about, the team already presented. Where are we? At which stage we are? In case of the wind turbines, we are at the final stage of the selection of a supplier. We have prepared the shortlist already, and the same is applicable to the installation of the wind turbine generator. The foundations. This is a preliminary stage due to the change of a type of the foundation to be applied. We are at the preliminary stage. of contracting process, which commenced right now, practically. The same is applicable to the installation of the foundations. Onshore export cable, this is also the final stage. Now we are at the stage of obtaining the final bids, and we are planning to finalize this stage by the end of this year. Inter-array cable. This stage has been divided into two separate sub-packages. We'll be basing it on the delivery of the cables itself and the installation implementation. In case of a supply, we are at the stage, advanced stage. In case of the installation of inter-array cables, this is the final stage. The offshore substation, also the final stage. The shortlet has been prepared. The bids are on their way. Offshore export cable, exactly the same situation. We are waiting for final bids to be submitted. And the onshore substation at this advanced stage. And here we will be performing another negotiations round, which will bring us to the selection of final selection choice of the supplier. What are our requirements? I am talking here not only about the main packages, but also about the contracts that we still have to sign, and there are several dozen of those contracts. The main criteria for selecting our suppliers, of course, the commercial bid and the commercial terms, which is quite obvious, I guess. The understanding of the customer requirements, OW customer. And I'd like to refer to what P&Q already mentioned and how we see it, how we understand it. As part of the proceedings, we perform Q&A sessions. We are holding Q&A sessions. We want this communication to be performed at the partnership level because we think it's the best way to ensure the understanding between the two parties, the understanding of the requirements of the customers and the capabilities of the subcontractor, contractor, and the references and experience. Of course, we are basing our work on the experience of companies that have experience accumulated in similar projects. Offshore experience is welcome, but of course, it's not a prerequisite. Deadlines and delivery schedule, as we all know, in case of offshore wind farms, there could be a domino effect. So we are revising very meticulously all the schedules that the suppliers submit, and we ask for consulting advice if we see some risk in it. The team and the competence areas, what Maciek already mentioned, we need people that have a full certification to work offshore or a certification required to perform their tasks. But not only that, we also need people with competences demonstrated by certificates, qualifications, diplomas. This is the full review of the teams that will be responsible for performing individual tasks. Quality of service, let me refer back to Maciek. The questionnaires sent by Maciej and the revision thereof, these are not just empty words. A number of our sub-suppliers are disqualified at this stage, drop off at this stage, and I want this to be well defined. It is not just a matter of a format and a table and a sheet. It's a matter of implementation of a quality assurance and security system at the companies. We cannot afford making mistakes at the implementation stage. The financial status, there was a very good comment from P&Q. We are looking only and solely at companies that are able to carry those projects from a financial point of view. A small offshore project is a large project in itself. And we have to have this in the back of our minds. Of course, the next thing is the contractual terms. And here, this is a mutual understanding of expectations that we're able to put in writing so that both parties are fully satisfied and have a full understanding. We have to have a mutual understandable position. Of course, there are certain contractual as a market standard that cannot be overlooked, the evaluation of the risk and the remedies. In this case, we are talking about the discussion between the potential contractor and OW company, Ocean Winds, finding the potential bottlenecks and develop a plan to eliminate them, or at least prevent them from happening before they happen. And the local content, of course, we pay attention to that. And the participation in our current tenders demonstrate that there is a number of local companies that are taking part even in the main packages, which we find it makes us very happy. This is what we bet on. Why? Let me repeat again. As part of a contracting process, we are developing a plan now for all the supplementary contracts that maybe are not that large as the main packages, but these are the equally important contracts to complete the project, deliver project properly and correctly. Let us all know that the mechanism of selecting the supplier is very complicated, but we are open to any discussions and we try to do it in the most transparent way possible. I'd like to encourage everyone who haven't had a chance yet to register themselves in our global supplier database, because it's a global supplier database, so that you enter the database, define your category that you'd like to be taken into account as part of the tender proceedings that we conduct. And this information goes to the procurement department, and then you will receive a feedback whether OW, BC Wind need this type of services. Thank you.
Dziękuję, Maciej.
Thank you, Maciej.
Szanowni Państwo, w
Ladies
ramach
and
tej
gentlemen,
prezentacji przewidzieliśmy
part of this
dodatkową
presentation, we
sesję,
envisaged an additional
do
Q&A
slajdów, które
session
zostały pokazane.
to the slides that have been displayed. So if you have any questions, so please raise your hand and we'll be answering on an ongoing basis. If not, of course, at the end of the meeting, we also have a Q&A session. So maybe at that time, we will discuss more things. I can't see now, as I understand, a lot of conversations, Maciej, you've already had and have in front of you today behind the scenes. So let's move on to the next part. So the topic of Ocean Winds cooperation with Władysławowo, so the O&M port base for the project, and with other stakeholders in this local dimension, which is very important, taking into account the place we are at, namely the Pomerania region. So I'd like to ask Kacper once again to me, and the president of Schooner Company, Mr. Witold Wawrzonkowski. Good morning. So an introductory question, one of the easy ones, the general ones. How did it happen with was placed on your map? The answer may seem obvious, but it's not so obvious as it may seem. The obvious part is the location. It's clear that Władysławowo, out of a port that could have been the O&M port, definitely is closest to our offshore wind farm, so location. So this is a very important factor. But let me say that before we started cooperation with Władysławowo, we also carried out a more in-depth analysis than just measuring the distance to the offshore wind farm site. And these analyses that can include the access to the very port itself, communication. I must say that Władysławowo is excellent in this regard. I don't know how many of you go to Władysławowo in summer, but despite the potential traffic jams and there are also other communication means such as train. So Władysławowo is lucky enough to have this access to the airport, but also the infrastructure in the port itself. And here we were very positively surprised by the quality of infrastructure available at the port. Having completed all these analyses more on our side, we got in touch with the port, with the president, Mr. President, and we're happy to find out that this is a company that we are able to set up to establish partnership relationships. So the approach to the situation, the openness to the partnership, to the joint conducting of the project was very strong, and the appetite for innovations and for a more broader look, more broader view, because Vasovo remains a fishery port, but it doesn't close off its road for the development in other areas, in other directions. Excellent. At the moment, I'll hand over the floor to Mr. President, but let me ask Marek Świerczyński, who also will be displaying to us the visualization. Marek Świerzyński. In a moment, we'll get to you, Marek. However, now I have a question to Mr. President. How is this cooperation moving or progressing from your point of view? Well, I must say that such a good cooperation as Ocean Wind, I never remember anybody else. Or there are very rare cases. So what's the distinguishing factor? Why is it such? First of all, very concrete approach. We are talking, this is a private company, global player. The fact that we chose Władysławowo is first of all based on business criteria, no other criteria. If we are talking about actual needs, actual expectations, and actual solutions that can be implemented. Openness, full openness makes us, helps us find very quickly solutions to any issues that may arise. As Schooner, you're you're in charge of the port, you're managing the port, but the cooperation is broader. I would say maybe if you could refer to this level of relationship with local government unit, with various stakeholders, with fishermen being one of the key group of stakeholders. Well, yes, Schooner is a company, a unique company, I can say, regarding the management of the port infrastructure in Poland. We are the only company that is not only the port manager entity, but also we are conducting a number of other activities, such as also fisheries, processing of the fish, and the overhaul shipyard, including the port management. This is due to the fact that Schooner is as old as the port itself. The company is. We know the port was developed before the war. Schooner was formed soon after the war. We are the only company that survived the difficult early 90s. The only type of company of this type in Poland. So therefore, this historical legacy means that Schooner's position is as it is now. The other unique feature of Schooner is such that we are now owned by the local government unit, not the municipality, the starostwo. It means that the starostwo, as our owner, has a broader view, I would say, of issues related to our operations, including more from the regional, not so much a very local view. So how does this offshore fit your operation from the broader point of view, not just port infrastructure here and now, and a little in a broader context? Clear. As you mentioned, but Port Władysławowo is a typical fisherman port, fishing port. We know that the fishermen anglers also, these are the functions that are getting restricted. There are fewer and fewer units, the limits, the quotas are getting lower, and there are certain bans on fishing activities. So the gap arises, and to fill up this gap, the offshore wind fits the purpose very well. A few years ago, when I came to this office, we conducted the first analysis. We decided that this is enormous opportunity for Władysławowo, but this is, I can say, a historical window is opening once every few dozen years. We can be taken into account. That should be taken of that. The previous time window appeared in the 30s when the port in Władysławowo was built. Now we have this window of opportunity when the offshore wind farms are built on the Polish territorial waters, maritime zones, and enormous investment projects, enormous scale, enormous magnitude. And we, as Władysławowo Port, has to take advantage of that. We adopted a strategy that says that we really place our bets, big bets, on offshore wind farms. The starostwo, our owners, fully accepted this, are fully agreed, and they provide full support in this regard, in this operations. With fishermen could take advantage of it too. fishermen, unfortunately, the common opinion is that the fishing industry is shrinking. That's not fully true. The commercial fishing, will remain in place. It'll stay there. It'll be there. Maybe to a smaller degree. Those who want to fish, they will continue to do that. But there's a large number of fishing companies or fishermen that want to step back from this industry because the conditions are getting more difficult for them. They don't have anyone to take over these operations. And for this community, for this part, offshore is also an opportunity for new jobs, which is very important in Warsaw for the full year employment. We know that summer and outside of summer are two different cities, I can say. Congested tourist place during the summer, and I would say a more kind of laid back in the other part of the year. During the summer, there's a lot of jobs, and outside of summer, there's definitely fewer jobs. And such operations as offshore, the port provide these full year jobs, employment opportunities. It's very important for the local community. It's also an opportunity for them to requalify, change their qualifications, to find a good job. And what else can I say? But please also say regarding the preparation of the infrastructure of the port to perform the role of the operation maintenance port for supporting the offshore wind farm project. What's the situation here? So port practically already today or overnight is ready to receive the ships supporting the offshore wind farms. Our basic parameter that limits the size of a vehicle is the depth, the size of the ships. Today, or for a number of years now, we can receive ships that go 4.5 meter depth, which is practically twice as much as in Weba, for instance. Besides, what sets us apart is our sighting conditions. That's what was a very safe port on our sea coast. Northwestern winds prevail. Vacovo is sheltered by the Rosewie Cape against the wind, so it means that the entry into the port and exit from the port is very safe versus all the other small ports on our seacoast. Also, the direction of the approach to the entry to the port in case of a northwestern winds. So this approach is safe. It's very important for such operations as offshore wind farm operations, which, as everyone says, that the units, the vessels will be supporting the offshore wind farms, will be entering and exiting a few times a day, and every day of outage, these are losses worth counted in tens of thousands of PLN. So this is very important to be able to enter and exit safely this port as often as possible. Just to summarize, if you could refer to what the cooperation should be like in the future, how it should be continued, what factors, what potentially factors should appear, what should happen so that this time window opportunity, historical window of opportunity could be taken advantage of while respecting all the broader interests, various stakeholders that are associated both with the port and with the city of Warsaw. There's a number of factors that I'd like to bring up. First of all, let me say that this cooperation with the offshore wind is not for a few years. It's over several dozen years. We're talking about at least 30 years or even up to 50 years or maybe longer. No one knows it today how long this will take. Therefore, we want to prepare our port not for just a few years forward, but for the next several dozen years. So we are taking initiatives aimed at modernizing, upgrading our facilities, port facilities, so that over next waterfront facilities, so that they can last for another dozens of years. And also, we want to deepen the port, 4.5 meters, which is against the background of other regional local ports on the Polish seacoast. It's a lot. However, there are vessels that require deeper, larger towing units. SOV vessels, we're talking about 6 meters depth. So we'd like to adapt our port to be able to receive also such vessels. Another important thing is the access, land access, onshore access to the port. Today already this access is very good, but outside of summer season, it's excellent, I would say. Very excellent, both by rail and by road. We have direct connection to Gdynia. The train station is at the gate, next to the gate to the port. There's no better solution. The access from the airport, if you require specialists from other areas, takes up to 1.5 hours, about 1.5 hours. And we are at the port. We bypass all the traffic jams during summer. It's very important. Also, what is happening regarding the road access? We know that we are at the stage of selecting the location, the site for the Yamaris route. I think the final stage of a selection between 3 or 4 versions, options, how this route should be planned. There will be a siting decision, potentially or probably in a relatively short period of time, there will be a decision taken about the implementation of this project. Therefore, in a few years, the access to the Warsaw port will get even better. And this is what I'd like to wish everyone, that this is actually accomplished, not only the ones related to the offshore industry, but also others who go also for other purposes, also for tourist reasons. I think among the people here, there's a number of such people, including myself. You mentioned the investment project, about the dialogue, about different projects in infrastructure, but there's also another area of investment projects that are very important. And I have a question regarding that to Kacper about the investments in brain power. So the preparation, manpower, preparation of human resources with this prospect that the president mentioned, long term. Because as during one of our meetings, there was a statement made that offshore is not a sprint, it's a marathon race. So you need to look long term at these projects. So what's your view of preparation of human resources? What initiatives you're implementing, and how much is this important for your operations? As we repeated a number of times, not only myself, but we keep repeating that at any opportunity, that the supply chain is not just companies, it's only also people that will be working with us, mainly at the operational stage. And this news already has been mentioned, that we are preparing the operational phase. We are building the project. It is very important, but the operational stage is the time when we'll need most people that we need to work with. And in this context, we are engaging ourselves, involving ourselves in various initiatives, including educational ones. We are aware of the fact that the accessibility of a qualified personnel in Poland is limited to such a degree that we expect also that during the early stages of the operations of this project, we will be forced to utilize the human resources from other countries, also including to ensure the transfer of competence. However, at the later stage, at a subsequent stage, we'd like to use local manpower, first of all. So as I mentioned, we are getting involved in various educational projects. So the first project like that is the graduate project organized globally. Poland joined it last year when for students of universities, we are organizing a 2-year internship, and this internship is held at least at 2 sites. So the given student is working, for instance, 1 year in Poland and the next year in Korea, US, or at another project that we are currently running. So this is also a global program SOW, but locally in Poland, we have implemented also our own program. This is the Career with the Wind program that we successfully completed at 3 universities last year. This year, we are expanding it further on. And also here, we put a lot of emphasis on the Puck municipality, because so the Puck municipality is the area where we'll be over the next 30 years present. So this is the basic time frame of the project operation. So we do hope that we'll be able, even at the early stages of education, whether high school or in some cases The elementary schools will be able to inject this ability of this idea, concept that actually you stay in this industry, taking advantage of the fact that there are people here available, live in the given location. So this is also is in line, is compatible with what the president mentioned. So the ability to stay, availability of jobs also in winter, in also not only in summer, so irrespective of the summer season. So this project Career with Wind already took place, was implemented, and this year another edition is taking place also in Puck municipality. The third program is the Chociewo program, but we are getting involved with other developers, the joint project, the municipality powered by wind. Also, other pro-social and educational initiatives are taking place.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. With this, we have completed, in a way, the topic of collaboration with local suppliers, the local content, showing how important the infrastructural investments are, investing in youth, in qualifications of the people to work there soon, to implement the project, and for the suppliers, as we understand, it's very important that these competencies are being developed locally with all due respect to the interest of the local communities. Now let's move over to see what will this base look like. I'll pass the mic to the floor to Mark. Okay, everybody, when talking about the port location selection, besides its good location, it's worth noting about the good navigation conditions and technical situation of the port and good depth of the port approach channel. Moving to our visualization, the technical maintenance building will be located between Młotowa and Władysław 4th Streets, in direct vicinity of the port or neighborhood of port, and a railway communication line. However, the pier will be located in a modernized part of the passenger pier at the very center of the port, assuming 2 CTV vessels, up to 2 CTV vessels. What you can see, I'll just stress that this is an initial stage of the conceptual work. The BC Wind team is working on a land management concept and development concept, the building, the base, modernizing the pier, the passenger pier. And this is during implementation. It's only a preliminary visualization, so as to show you what it potentially could look like, and probably it will change. We assume that the maintenance port will be used not only during the operations that we envisage for at least 35 years, so we would like to have it, but we also like to expand that port to use it for the duration of construction and commissioning. Of course, our assumptions are that the service depot will work 7 days a week, around the clock, for the entire term of operations. The building will be a technical and warehousing facility for the service personnel and CTVs. It will contain the basic parts like coordinating center, the office, and the sort of leisure part, and the warehouse and storage. We assume starting with construction works in 2024. However, we'd like to commission the depot operations in full in 2026. Moving to this slide, summarizing our project delivery model. As I have said, the building will meet 4 main functions. The MCC, which is the Control and Coordination Center, SCADA, spare parts storage office, and transportation of spares. Of course, we assume the transportation of spares by land to the depot, then loading it to CTV, and we assume such a ship because the distance to the port is not big, so it's an optimal solution. We expect 1 to 2 CTVs, and the transport of all the maintenance parts, tools, or crews from the depot to the project location. That's in brief. Of course, transport, we expect various dimensions up to 1 ton, as it's generally accepted in the project. 1 ton of spare parts, that's all the weight. From the operation maintenance depot, we also assume supporting the onshore part, not only the offshore. So we assume also the maintenance of the onshore part from our depot. That's so much from me. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for participating in this part. And I'll ask Mark to stay, because now we're moving to equally important topic, which is innovations. It's an important title of DNA in Ocean Wind's DNA. Just as an introduction, the offshore sector, like very few, depend on innovations. The future is conditioned on what's happening in innovations, and thus I'd like to pass the floor to you to be able to describe what it's like in practice from Ocean Wind's perspectives, and you can detail one specific project you're supporting. Thank you. Innovation, ladies and gentlemen, Ocean Wind's and BC Wind's project team. Innovations are our strategic project development plan element. We understand this in various dimensions or aspects. I'd like to talk today about our collaboration with the European Innovations Cluster, the LB Cluster, to which we have submitted the project of unmanned autonomous vehicles or vessels for wind farms. This project was selected in the competition to the next stage, and now we're encouraged who wants to take part in developing that project to come to us at LB Cluster, and there is a grant, financial grant foreseen for the companies that will win the competitions. I'd like to tell you a bit what the system is like, what's that innovation, and what we want to introduce this innovation. Okay, the unmanned autonomous vehicle system, we'd like to use it to support all operation and maintenance activities throughout the term of operation of the project. And that system would consist mainly of the 4 pillars, 4 pylons, 7 main functions. The system would be used for transport, on surface water transport, spare parts from the depot to the wind farm. Another important function is inspections, regular inspections of underwater structures, inter-array cables, export cables to the substations, also taking into the account all the required periodic inspections, monitoring of the bottom and marine environment. The third very important function, of course, is rescue. Well, that's mainly support the rescue team in case of an incident, especially in a situation of very limited visibility, so that through immediate action we could locate and pinpoint the location of an incident. And the last but not least function is safety. We'd also like to use such a system to monitor and check various incidents by sending such a system and checking what the situation is like and sending the data to the maintenance depot. Such a system, we like it to work in 2 modes. The first mode is an autonomous underwater vehicle. We would inspect the underwater structures and equipment for corrosion protection or systems protecting the cabling. We'd also like to use it for monitoring and acquiring data for the ecological campaigns. In its second mode of operation as an unmanned surface vessels, we would like to have inspection of the area of the offshore farm and also transporting spare parts from the depot to the wind farm. What effect we'd like to achieve? Why do we want to implement that? Well, of course, we'd like to improve and optimize all the operations in our project by minimizing the participation of technical crews and manned vessels, thus decreasing in a way the risk of human intervention and minimizing the entire carbon footprint. The main requirements the system should meet. First of all, appropriate range. We assume various possibilities. It can be done in such a way that the vehicle is sent from our service depot to the project location with sufficient capacity in a range to come back, but or possibly to recharge it on site and come back to the base. We are assuming transportation of various volumes and masses. It might be a series of such vehicles, smaller to larger ones. We'd like to facilitate the transportation of parts. It often happens at such projects that when you're doing the servicing, while you are on location, on site, you realize there's a part missing. We don't want, in such a situation, to be sending the CTV, but use those UAVs to optimize the cost of such an intervention. Of course, such a system should be resilient to harsh sea conditions. It has to be controlled by artificial intelligence with information transfer in real time. In summary, what we expect from the project is that the system should ensure a multitasking, comprehensive possibilities to inspect and supervise the offshore part, the above water part, and the underwater part. It should operate remotely, acquire data, and send it to the artificial intelligence control system for decisions to be made in real time. It is a bit complicated, but this would be the only way where we could impact the optimization of the wind farms process. Of course, the development of this system, the innovation, forces us to develop the functionality and software of the system, as well as we assume the need to develop docking station that will allow recharging the vehicle when it's on our project location. All this from me. You're encouraged to take part, to apply, get in touch with me, with my team, with Ebecaster. As I have said, that idea will be co-funded with 60,000 euros, up to 60,000 euros for the winning companies. So you're welcome to apply. Can you share the deadlines with us? Because these deadlines are coming from, it is October, November. Okay. Since we have some time left, I'll use your presence. I assume you took part in the workshop that you were organizing. Am I right? Am I correct? Yes. Could you share some thoughts about what questions were coming up, at what stage the project providers, potential project providers are at? We were presenting the solutions for the first time at the Copenhagen conference. Second time we have organized a workshop for the local businesses interested in implementing the solution. I was positively surprised because there were many interesting companies interested in the topic. There were a few technical questions, how we would like to develop that system, Would we like to, for example, split the functionality because the functionality is comprehensive or complex? Of course, these are the challenges where we are aware that they're quite complicated. However, nevertheless, we'd like to have this functionality preserved, and we'd like to use that system to support our wind farms. I'd like to thank all of you if you took part in that workshop for participating. We are open to discussions, to explanations, to dialogue, and we'd like to have the system implemented. Thank you. And concerning a broader approach to innovations, what does it look like from your perspective? Are you in it on a day-to-day basis? Yes. Concerning the technical project delivery, we'd like to implement as many as possible innovative solutions in such a way as to optimize our project. Of course, what's very important is that specific systems be in appropriate readiness for implementation of the project. These are various aspects, like the fact that at the project we're considering the latest wind turbine technologies, which are only at the testing stage or in design stage. It's a big innovation. It also requires us to input more work and validation, but looking holistically, we're open, of course. When talking to our subcontractors, we are open to all initiatives and optimizations of structures, solutions, designs. However, what's also important is that we have to be on time with the project, and not all the innovations will be able to implement. What's very important here is that every innovation has to have appropriate technological maturity to be implemented on the serial projects. Concerning the operations part, we are considering many aspects, not only the underwater vehicles, but also existing systems like various types of drones that could be used for inspections of blades, or potentially to perform smaller repairs to wind turbine blades. We are considering many aspects. We have submitted one idea because it's not on the market yet, but the systems that we have, we're also interested in having them. If you are also working at companies that could in a way optimize our operations phase of the project, like, for example, using various autonomous inspection, monitoring, etc. systems, please get in touch with us. And looking from the point of view of your day-to-day work, when you're coming across innovations, is this an area for huge innovations, big companies, or small and medium can take part in it? I'd say it depends on how comprehensive the task is. In the case of ideas that are presented here today, I think it is rather for smaller companies. Smaller topics, like smaller companies, I think, do play a very important role concerning the implementation of more complicated solutions, like solutions in the wind turbines or the wind turbine itself. As you see, these are the components which are being developed by large companies, and only such companies can bear the comprehensiveness and the costs relating to developing such innovations. So I'd say that depending on the costs required to provide specific innovation, the breakdown between company sizes is of importance. Okay, and the most difficult question: did anything surprise you in the innovations you're coming across? You didn't know what to say. Well, innovations are surprising because when you look at the market and from time to time hear how some systems are being implemented, the fact that today they're developing robots that are capable of performing an inspection with quite good accuracy, inspection of blades, and perform minor repairs, it is surprising, because I never thought earlier on that technology could progress in such a way that such a robot traveling along the blade is able to inspect it, repair it in harsh weather conditions. So the innovations do present surprises because, well, it's a DNA of innovations. If they were not surprising, then probably would all be implementing those systems. However, what we see is that some companies can surprise with something new, implement something very novel. It is a surprise as a general response to your question. Thank you. I think it also makes your day-to-day work very interesting. Sure, it is. Thank you. So with this, we have completed the part on innovations. I'll take a different seat and ask the representatives of Ocean Winds. You stay, please, but I want to have Kasper and Maciej with me. And now we are moving on to the Q&A session. First of all, we have questions that came up during the registration. But before we start answering these questions, we might encourage you on the spot, should you have any questions concerning either the presentation of the topics we were discussing or other matters, please do come forward. If you don't have questions, perhaps you have some comments. If not, you might be leaving them for the more face-to-face talks or bilateral contacts. So let's go to the questions that we have on the transparencies. We'll ask you about the questions, and then we'll go to the question that you were submitting online, the online viewers. Okay, question. What are the quality requirements for the composites? I will say, okay, I'll start with that some time ago, we have changed the foundations from piles to jackets. So I understand the question about composites mainly concerned how we would like to protect the foundations. Okay, since we have changed the type of foundations, now we are at the stage of analyzing in what way we will be protecting the foundations. At this point, I can't confirm it because these analyses, we are talking about 60 to 180 millimeter fraction composites. Whether they'll be needed, we have to finish the analysis. We have to check the conditions at a specific location, whether the location requires this kind of protection. Concerning the composites, we're talking about also considering about inter-array cable and export cable protections in a situation where there'll be a problem with burying them underground, but on the sea bottom, but we are at a stage of various analysis. So we are wondering about 60 to 180 millimeter dimensions. Okay, the initial questions are very, very specific, down to the points, which shows that the Polish market is quite mature because they're not general questions. They are coming from companies that actually have a lot of knowledge and know the topics. What are the criteria for the corrosion protection of steel structures and fire protection protections? Well, it's a standard question that typically come up on the market. Has to comply with all the standards. Concerning the corrosion protection, as standard, we expect a CX protection with high resistance. We'd like to have all these systems to have a lifetime of 5 years, because that's what we assume the operating time, 35 years. But this is concerning the top side. Concerning the underwater side, it's 4 level with anodic protection, and I'll mention we are at the stage of analyzing what type of anodes to employ for the project. We are also considering passive and active, but at this stage, I can't tell you more. This is concerning the protections. Talking about anodes, another question. Our company is protecting steel corrosion protection anodes. Such companies are far down in the supply chain. Are you doing pre-qualification of such suppliers, or will they be left to the manufacturers of the steel constructions to procure? Well, in general, we're open to dialogue with any company, any potential contractor. Concerning anodes, of course, there's a question of economics or business case. We want, assuming implementing the project, we want to have such systems in bigger project packages, but we do understand, we don't know what the market is like. And when checking the aspects, commercial aspects, if a specific company is able to deliver a system that quality-wise is acceptable to us, then of course we are open to discussions and potential exclusion from a larger project package of such a system or other systems. But please get in touch with us and start cooperating with us. Thank you. Another slide, please. Does Ocean Winds, when building their local supply chain, are they interested in establishing collaboration with the Polish companies planning to expand the operation with a maintenance of mechanical parts of wind turbines? If so, what conditions have to be met? Well, just to explain to begin with, we are servicing not only wind turbines, also other components like offshore and onshore substations. So collaboration with companies offering such services is absolutely included. However, concerning wind turbines, as you do know, for the first years, wind turbines are maintained by their manufacturers. So potentially after that time, that will be negotiated with the suppliers of the turbines. We are considering also using external contractors that could be providing such services to us. So in summary, we're open concerning the terms and requirements. At this stage, we have not yet created such requirements. It will be created later, in later project stages, but in general, we're open to collaboration because they are not turbines, but also other components requiring such service. Another question. Are you planning to use prefabricated concrete platform in this or other future projects? I'll answer that question. In our project here, we have selected jacket foundations, so we are not considering concrete platforms. Such solutions are welcomed and preferred on monopile structures. No, in our project, but in other projects of OW, yes, I think absolutely so. Now the question, I think, not to Marek. When is FAD expected, and what is the latest acceptable deadline for commissioning the project? Well, I won't overtake Marek. Well, FID, we plan it for the end of next year. Of course, the deadlines can be delayed. However, we don't see such delays at the moment. So we are still planning the end of the next year. The latest acceptable deadline for commissioning, are we talking about the regulatory or company perspective? It's 7 years from getting the final decision about Article 18 decision for support. We don't have the decision yet, so that horizon is further than closer. Our latest acceptable deadline, well, we're trying to commission the project as soon as possible. Like I said earlier, the planned commercialization date is 2027. We're not planning any delays for today. Of course, these deadlines, like in case of FID, they can shift. It can be 2028 in some situations. the acceptable deadline. We have no such notion. It will depend on the project situation, of the general company situation, but things that can be changing. So you are sticking to the schedule that at the moment it is going on schedule. So that's a signal sent to external world.
Let me ask for another slide. We have recently observed several failures in the offshore wind farm projects due to the financing profitability rate of the project. So the developer either withdrew or stopped financing. Some countries, that is BC wind under threat? Answer briefly, no. But referring more broadly to these issues that are visible on the market, because everyone has to face it. We, similar to other projects, not only in Poland but worldwide, also feel this pressure of the market. We realize how rapidly the offshore wind market is growing in Poland and worldwide. Up to now, the project has been based on such stable assumptions that we don't see any threats, any risks that project could be interrupted, suspended, or the company could step back from it. So under the reality that we find ourselves now, that the product is using the support scheme, but also offering some more, and based on the technical assumptions, we cannot see any risk for a project to be abandoned or suspended. To what degree does the support mechanism in place in Poland is functioning and is a stabilizing factor in comparison to other projects carried out on other markets? The support scheme in Poland is very similar to the support mechanisms that you can see in other markets, with a basic difference that in the first stage of the project, the support was granted in a non-competitive manner. In other words, that the project that reached a certain stage by a certain deadline received the same contract for differences, CFD. But in reference to the outside of Europe projects, those support systems are very diversified. Sometimes they are non-existent and they are under more economic pressure sometimes. And this pressure is also, in case of Polish system of the second phase, it will be auction-based system. So those support mechanisms, the projects compete for support against other, and this builds up pressure between developer assume certain price when the market conditions change. If they change, that's still within the buffer that the investor assumed, the project continued. But if it's remote, far away from the assumptions from the auctions, then the projects are suspended or even abandoned. These are all purely business decisions. Another question, the electrical measurements, high voltage on the wind farms. What is the working voltage level on turbines, medium voltage? At which place measurements are made? Is it onshore? And various turbine components. What happens after the turbines are assembled on offshore? But as an explanation, the voltage level from the low voltage is raised to 66 kilovolts raised, and then it's transferred to the offshore when it's raised to 220, and then it goes to the onshore substation lifted to 400 kilovolts. The procedure is as follows, test-wise. After the turbines are installed, the mechanical tests have to be performed. After the mechanical tests have been accepted, then you have to move on and perform a 10-day operational test for each turbine. After such test for each turbine, the complete overall tests are performed onshore and on the onshore substation on the connection point to the PSC TSO grid. Thank you. Next slide, please. Does the SCADA system, high-level SCADA system, will be considered for the BC Wind project? Is assistance required in developing the digital strategy that will be appropriate for the project? The so-called top SCADA system is currently in our company in the corporate department. This top SCADA system integrates all projects that are underway. So the top SCADA, we don't need top SCADA. Of course, our top SCADA our internal SCADA of our project should be integrated with the top SCADA system. So answering the question, we have such a system currently in our company. Potentially, we are open to a dialogue if any of the companies, any of the vendors would like to add something from on their own, or we're open to a dialogue, to cooperation, to verify whether this top SCADA could be improved on our side. Thank you. Next question. We are the manufacturer of composite laminated elements using such materials as glass fiber, carbon fiber, Kevlar, aramid, and so on. Whether and to what extent the composites, except for the blades, are used in the Wisłyn projects to a small degree, rather to a small degree, I would say. Thinking about it, where potentially we could utilize such materials, the only thing I can think of is potentially the crates on the platform that are the so-called made using the so-called FRP materials. That's the only thing. In case of other components, these are other structural materials. We are not considering composites this way in such cases, unless you have an idea how we could improve, change the structural components in the given products. We are, of course, open to a dialogue. Clear, thank you very much. Please, next slide, please. Now we have questions from this slide. Let me read it in English as they were asked. Let me give, and please give an answer in English. 2027 was mentioned. I was mentioning the commercialization date. What is the risk of a project offshore work being pushed out to 2029? The answer should be in Polish or English. What is the risk of implementation of a project, commercialization of a project, of being pushed out to 28, 29 even? As I said, we are now on track according to the schedule, but I also mentioned that we didn't complete the main design engineering phase or the main contracting phase. So in a natural way, the final completion of the project, completion of the project will depend upon when the given components are supplied. I'm talking about all components, the main ones such as turbine jackets, cables, and so on. Of course, we assume a certain risk due to the accessibility of the given availability of a given components or materials used for the construction of or manufacturing of such project. But if we are forced to push the project implementation up to 2028, it may happen. But as of now, it's not in our schedule. Until 2029, I think the risk is very small if we were to force to be pushed out the schedule to run up to 2029. It would happen if any of the key or more than one of key components would not be able to implement the project according to the declarations. Thank you. Kiedy przetarg na dostawę kabli będzie otwarty, jaki jest plan kontraktowania? Czyli to będzie dostawa, czy też pod klucz dostawa i instalacja? As I presented earlier, we split these scopes. So we'll have the supply of a cable and then separately installation of a cable. The tender for the supply of cable, the final stage will be implemented over the next few weeks. Thank you. Next question, please. Czy zamierzają Państwo osobne pakiety dla stacji transformatowej morskiej i fundamentów? Jeżeli tak, to jakie są plany czasowe? Well, yes, because these scopes are separate, so the offshore substation is a separate scope and the foundation, so it's unified with the entire part of a different package. So both tenders are underway. Let me just add that all the presentations that have been shown today are available on our website, and we will be publishing it and promoting it. So all the participants of the meeting here and online as well will have access the presentation that would also include the tables that in detail are described. Those packages are in detail. Next question, is it possible to know which are the bidders in the competition for the cable supply and installation today? So we can approach them, please. It's not, doesn't seem to me that we can share this piece of information, which companies are in play here. I think we should put a full stop here. And this is, I think, the last question that we have been submitted to us on the slides. If there are any more, then we'll be forwarding the answers to whichever supply packages to be tendered as per today. Last tender that will be held, it'll be the tender for the foundations, which is at the initial stage of the RFI process, and we are not foreseeing anything anymore. So this was already included in the table that you presented. So all the answers are related to the packages and the purchase orders described in the tables in detail. Please refer to them. I think these are the last questions that we have on the screen. I think that's the information that I got. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Oh, I got the last minute breaking news that the Polish Association of the Wind Farms is so nice that we would like to invite you on professional terms to the conference organized in November. Director Chopek will probably be able to provide you with more information on that conference right away. As a comment, please, if you could share this news with us. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Kacper. Since we are cooperated with Ocean Wind for many years and we are jointly developing this offshore wind farm sector, the Polish Association of Wind Farm on November 21st, 22nd, the largest offshore event in Poland, where we will be available as well. And the entire industry will be meeting there. I would like to invite all the suppliers, sub-suppliers, companies that want to be involved in that industry, because it was mentioned, it's key for us to develop this local environment of suppliers, because we have a number of projects in front of us, and from the developer's point of view, it's of key importance that the supply of the key maintenance companies, support companies, and suppliers will be as large as possible. The whole pool is as large as possible, so we can carry out implement our projects in line with the schedules adopted. So, especially for you, the participants of today's meetings will be offering a special package of solutions and a special price for this event. So please contact me. We'll be sending out special code to log in. Registration starts next week, beginning of next week. So the conference will be quite extensive. There'll be a lot of workshops, training sessions, and availability of all developers. Ocean Wind will be one of our main partners, but there will be other developers, everyone who has their sites on the Baltic Sea. So you'll have an easier touch with them. There's a lot of B2B sessions planned, so you'll have a chance to meet with them, talk to them about the contracts implementation, the possibility to join the process, be a part of all of our developers. So thank you very much. Thanks, Kacper, for this opportunity to take the floor, and please contact me directly. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please feel free to do that, since we are approaching the final part. So now it's the time for the summary in this group. First of all, indicating here, emphasizing big thanks to the companies that took part in this session, showing the best practices, the good practices. So Kacper, as part of this summary, both with respect to the Schooner company and the president of the P&Q company. Thank you very much. These are the best practices and the contacts that are worth promoting, and showing this openness of Polish entities to share knowledge is extremely important. Definitely, since As I mentioned at the very beginning, I'd like to thank very much both presidents here for taking part in this event again and promoting this contact, our dialogue with the Polish companies. I think the examples that will be able to promote during the next Suppliers Day will be much more of such products, and this cooperation project not as advanced as the two that we presented today, but our contracts with other Polish companies are also picking up steam. So, as Maciek already mentioned, so I think during the next Suppliers Day next year, we'll be showing many more of such projects. We also do hope that we'll be at a higher level of advancement of the suppliers' works. Excellent. Thank you very much. So also please get in touch with us, with all the people that are interested in cooperation with Ocean Wind. We have two persons highlighted here on the slide. Alexandra Jampolska. This is the person that everyone knows in this industry, in this community. She can't be here today with us, but without her, this event would not have taken place. Stakeholder manager, and Maciej Surmionek, who is with us, head of procurement department. So you have the email addresses. Persons who are with us today in Gdańsk definitely have their business cards. You can get in touch with them directly, although I'm sure that it will be possible to meet you either during the conference that Piotr Czopek just described a moment ago, so the next events organized by the industry. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank you for the participation, for all the speakers and for the guests. Please, a round of applause. I'd like to invite you for coffee. We finished a bit ahead of time, but that's how it happens when people are very specific and stick to the agenda and not distorting it too much. So we have a bit of extra time for coffee and for face-to-face conversation. Soon the persons that we are hosting today in Gdańsk will invite you for lunch. It will be in the building next door on the 32nd floor. So we have to come down, get into the highest building, and there at the reception desk there will be a person that will bring you in. Thank you very much.